30s are often described as the defining decade of your life. Not because everything magically falls into place, and not because you suddenly have it all figured out. In fact, for many people, their 30s feel more confusing, more demanding, and more intense than their 20s ever did. But what makes this decade different is clarity. The illusions start fading, the noise gets quieter, the stakes feel higher, and slowly, what truly matters begins to reveal itself. In your 20s, life often feels like experimentation. You try careers, relationships, cities, identities. You test boundaries. You chase excitement. You make mistakes and call it growth. There's a sense that time is abundant, that you can afford to wander. Your 30s are different. Time starts to feel real. Choices start to compound. Energy becomes more valuable. You begin to understand that not everything deserves your attention, and that realization changes everything. So what actually matters in your 30s? First, your health matters more than ever. In your 20s, you can get away with a lot. Late nights, poor eating habits, skipping workouts, high stress, little sleep. Your body forgives you quickly. In your 30s, the bill starts arriving. Not dramatically, not overnight, but subtly. You feel stiffness where there used to be flexibility. You notice fatigue where there used to be endless energy. Health in your 30s is not about aesthetics. It's about sustainability. It's about building a body and mind that can support the life you're trying to create. Sleep becomes non-negotiable. Regular movement becomes essential. Preventative care becomes smarter than reactive treatment. Mental health becomes as important as physical health. You start to understand that productivity without wellness is a short-term strategy with long-term consequences. What matters is consistency. You don't need extreme diets or punishing workouts. You need habits you can maintain for decades. Because in your 30s, you begin to realize that the goal is not to look good for a season. The goal is to feel strong for a lifetime. Second, your relationships matter deeply, but differently. In your 20s, relationships often revolve around excitement, chemistry, and validation. In your 30s, you start valuing stability, alignment, and emotional maturity. Friendships shift. Some fade naturally as lifestyles diverge. Some deepen because you've grown together. You may have fewer friends, but the ones you keep feel more meaningful. You realize you don't have time for surface-level connections or constant drama. You crave honesty. You appreciate reliability. Romantic relationships take on new weight. You begin to ask bigger questions. Not just, do I love this person, but can we build a life together? Compatibility becomes more important than passion alone. Shared values matter more than shared hobbies. Communication matters more than grand gestures. You start to understand that love is not just a feeling, it's a partnership, it's teamwork, it's choosing each other even when life gets complicated. In your 30s, what matters is depth. Depth in conversations, depth in commitment, depth in trust. Third, your career shifts from exploration to alignment. In your 20s, you often focus on gaining experience. You say yes to opportunities to see what fits. You may chase titles, salary increases, or prestige. In your 30s, the question changes. It becomes less about what can I get and more about what do I want my work to mean. For some, this is the decade of acceleration, climbing higher, earning more, leading teams. For others, it's the decade of redirection, leaving unfulfilling paths to pursue something more aligned with their values. What matters is not how impressive your job looks from the outside. What matters is whether your work supports the life you want. Does it give you energy or drain it? Does it align with your priorities? Does it allow space for relationships, health, and growth? Money becomes important, but differently than before. In your 20s, money might mean freedom to travel or enjoy experiences. In your 30s, money often means stability, security, options. Financial literacy becomes essential. Saving, investing, understanding debt, planning for the future.
These are no longer abstract ideas. They are foundations, because in your 30s, you begin to see how small financial decisions compound over time. What matters is not just earning more, it's building stability. It's reducing unnecessary stress. It's creating a safety net that allows you to make courageous decisions. Fifth, your identity stabilizes. In your 20s are often filled with identity experiments. You try different versions of yourself, you adapt to social groups, you compare yourself constantly. In your 30s, something shifts. You begin to accept who you are. Not perfectly, not completely, but more honestly. You care less about fitting in and more about being authentic. You start to understand your strengths. You acknowledge your weaknesses. You become less reactive to external opinions. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself to everyone. Self-confidence in your 30s is quieter than in your 20s. It's less about bravado and more about groundedness. It's knowing you can handle difficulty because you already have. What matters is self-respect, keeping promises to yourself, living in alignment with your values, choosing integrity over approval. Sixth, emotional maturity becomes essential. In your 30s, unresolved patterns become impossible to ignore. The same arguments, the same fears, the same self-sabotage. You start recognizing cycles. What matters is taking responsibility, not blaming your past forever, not blaming other people for your reactions. You begin doing deeper work, therapy, self-reflection, honest conversations. You learn to regulate emotions instead of being controlled by them. You learn to communicate instead of withdrawing or exploding. You learn that vulnerability is strength, not weakness. In your 30s, growth becomes intentional. You no longer grow just because life forces you to. You choose to grow. Seventh, comparison loses its power. By your 30s, your peers are in vastly different places. Some are married with children, some are single and traveling, some are building companies, some are changing careers, some appear wildly successful, some are quietly struggling. If you constantly compare, you will feel either superior or inadequate. Neither is healthy. What matters is your path, your timing, your priorities. You start to understand that life is not a race. It's not linear. There is no universal checklist you must complete by a certain age. The pressure to have it all figured out begins to dissolve when you realize that no one truly does. Eighth, peace becomes more attractive than excitement. In your 20s, excitement often feels like happiness, spontaneity, chaos, constant motion. In your 30s, peace starts to feel luxurious. A calm home, a reliable partner, a stable income, a predictable routine. These things may have seemed boring before. Now they feel grounding. You begin to value emotional safety over intensity. You prefer deep conversations over loud environments. You enjoy staying in as much as going out. What matters is inner calm, the ability to wake up without dread, the ability to go to sleep without regret. Ninth, legacy begins to cross your mind. You may not think about it daily, but the question starts forming. What am I building? What impact am I making? Legacy doesn't have to mean fame or wealth. It can mean raising kind children. It can mean mentoring others. It can mean creating work that helps people. It can mean living with integrity so that others feel safe around you. In your 30s, you begin to realize that life is not just about consumption, it's about contribution.
10th, adaptability remains crucial. Even though your 30s bring more structure, life can still surprise you. Careers change, relationships end, health challenges arise. Opportunities appear unexpectedly. What matters is resilience, the ability to pivot without losing yourself, the willingness to start over if necessary, the understanding that stability is important but rigidity is dangerous. Your 30s teach you balance between ambition and contentment, between independence and connection, between planning and flexibility. Another thing that matters deeply in your 30s is forgiveness. forgiving yourself for the mistakes of your 20s, forgiving others for not being who you needed them to be, letting go of grudges that drain your energy. You begin to see that holding on to resentment costs more than releasing it. You realize that growth requires compassion, both toward others and yourself. In your 30s, you understand that perfection is unrealistic. What matters is progress. Courage also matters more than ever. Courage to leave a job that no longer fits. Courage to commit to someone fully. Courage to have difficult conversations. Courage to admit when you are wrong. Courage to start something new even when you're not the youngest person in the room. Your 30s may not feel as fearless as your 20s, but they can be braver, because now your courage is informed. It's not reckless, it's intentional. Gratitude becomes powerful in this decade. You start noticing how far you've come, the skills you've built, the hardships you've survived, the people who stayed, the lessons you've learned. Gratitude shifts your perspective from scarcity to abundance. Instead of obsessing over what's missing, you appreciate what's present. Another crucial aspect is boundaries. In your 30s, you understand that not everyone deserves access to you. Not every opinion deserves your attention. Not every opportunity deserves your energy. Boundaries protect your peace. They protect your time. They protect your relationships. Setting boundaries may feel uncomfortable at first, but you realize that discomfort is temporary, while resentment from weak boundaries can last much longer. Authenticity becomes non-negotiable. You no longer want to perform a version of yourself just to fit expectations. You want to live honestly. You want your external life to reflect your internal truth. This might mean changing social circles. It might mean redefining success. It might mean disappointing some people. But what matters is living in a way that feels real. In your 30s, you also begin to appreciate simplicity. You don't need constant upgrades. You don't need to prove your worth through possessions. You start to value quality over quantity, in friendships, in work, in experiences. A simple life is not a small life. It can be a deeply meaningful one. Learning never stops being important. Your 30s are not a plateau. They are not the end of growth. They are a continuation, more focused, more intentional. Whether it's learning new skills, exploring new ideas, or understanding yourself better, curiosity keeps you evolving. What matters is staying open. One of the most profound realizations in your 30s is that you cannot control everything. You cannot control how others perceive you. You cannot control the economy. You cannot control unexpected loss. But you can control your response, your effort, your attitude, your integrity. That understanding brings both humility and power. Another truth that becomes clear is that happiness is not a destination you arrive at permanently. It's a collection of moments, a byproduct of alignment, a result of living in accordance with your values. In your 30s, you stop chasing constant highs and start appreciating steady contentment. Community matters deeply. Whether it's friends, colleagues, neighbors, or family, having people who support you and whom you support in return creates resilience. Isolation may feel easier sometimes, but connection is what sustains you. What matters is investing in people who invest in you. Self-awareness becomes one of your greatest assets. Understanding your triggers, knowing your limits, recognizing your patterns, being honest about your desires. Self-awareness allows you to make better decisions. It reduces unnecessary conflict. It strengthens relationships. It's not about overanalyzing every move. It's about living consciously. In your 30s, you begin to accept trade-offs. You can't have everything at once. You can't be everywhere. You can't say yes to every opportunity. Choosing one path often means letting go of another, and that's okay. Maturity is recognizing that every choice involves sacrifice and making peace with it. Joy matters too. Not just productivity, not just responsibility.
It's easy in your 30s to become consumed by obligations, career, family, finances, but joy is not optional, it's essential. Whether it's hobbies, travel, creativity, or simple pleasures, making space for joy keeps you alive inside. What actually matters in your 30s is alignment. Alignment between your values and your actions, between your goals and your habits, between your relationships and your standards. When your life aligns with who you truly are, you feel it. There's less friction, less confusion, less inner conflict. And finally, what matters most in your 30s is understanding that this decade is not about perfection, it's about intention. You won't get everything right. You will still make mistakes. You will still feel lost sometimes. But you will feel stronger, wiser, and more grounded than ever before. Your 30s are not about having all the answers. They're about asking better questions. They're about building a life that feels meaningful, not just impressive. They're about choosing depth over distraction, growth over ego, peace over chaos. They're about realizing that success without fulfillment is empty, and fulfillment without integrity is fragile. What actually matters in your 30s is not what looks good from the outside, it's what feels right on the inside. It's your health, your relationships, your time, your integrity, your growth, your peace, your courage, your contribution, your authenticity. And perhaps most importantly, it's recognizing that you are allowed to evolve. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to redefine success. You are allowed to outgrow people. You are allowed to slow down. You are allowed to dream bigger. You are allowed to choose differently than you did before. Your 30s are not a deadline. They are a foundation. What you build now, habits, relationships, mindset, skills, will echo for decades. So build carefully, build intentionally, build honestly. Because what actually matters in your 30s is not chasing a perfect life, it's creating a meaningful one.